All right, you guys, it is that time. 61 spoilers are right around the corner. So with that being the case, it is time to drop our predictions for the upcoming chapter of One Piece. So just in case this is your first time here, how this works is that I like to throw this in a 3x3 bingo format. We make 6 guesses and then I pull 3 predictions from the comment section and we see how many we can get right. Of course, sometimes I aim for easy ones. Sometimes I do make it a little bit harder. You know, the highest score we've had so far is 3 out of 9. Will we ever hit 4, 5, or 6? Let's find out. So before we get into 61 predictions, I do like to go back to the previous week just to see, like I said, how many we ended up getting right in the latest chapter. So, cutting over to 60 predictions, last week's, here we have it. These are the 9 guesses that we made, and I'm gonna be honest, you guys, but it's not looking too good. So, the first thing I said was that we would get a Dragon and Garp panel. We did get Dragon and Garp in the chapter, but I specifically wanted them in the same panel. So this did not happen. Look at that too. I gave it an 80% chance. Damn, we were this close. And I think this is going to be the main theme for all of these predictions in this video, is that we were on the money, because these will happen, but I think we just went a little bit too quickly, right? I think we will get Dragon and Garp maybe next chapter, but last chapter, of course, it was just the introduction to God Valley. So, next up, I said Garling ability showcase, and, you know, you could argue that we did get this, because Garling was on his bird, and he was slicing people up left and right. We did hear that Garling is leading the God Valley race, but of course, I was thinking about actual abilities, right? I was expecting him to whip out a devil fruit, or maybe a transformation, or just a named attack, so I'm not gonna give myself this one, even though he did technically fight in the chapter. So, right here, I said we'd get all of the God Knights, and surprisingly, we got this. You know, obviously, I think there could be more God Knights, but we did end up getting the Knights of God assembling around Garling. So I'm gonna give myself this one. 40% chance, and we actually hit that. Wow. Next up, I said we'd see a new Emu bestowed power. It's tough, right? Because I look at the Yeti God Knight at the back of the group, and I could say that is an Emu bestowed power, or a transformation given to them by Emu, right? It kind of reminds me of Domi Reversi, where the giants get turned and boom, giant wings, sharp teeth, etc. But we do not know for sure if the Yeti guy has like a power from Emu, a devil fruit, or if he just naturally looks like that. So I'm gonna put an X over this one. This did not happen. Next up, funny enough, I gave this a 100% chance, and it did happen. Roger and Garp both arrive, which is pretty cool, right? Even Rocks arrived, but I think that was pretty obvious. Next up, I said we would get new devil fruits in the chest. We'd get them revealed. Did not happen. So now, on to the bottom row, and we do have to keep this in mind, but the bottom row are the comment predictions. The first person said that we would get some Bogard action. And, we kind of got this, because Bogard was in the chapter right next to Garp. You know, action is very distinctive. We were expecting him to fight or to, you know, throw a sword attack, so I'm not going to count this one, unfortunately. See, if we got this, we would have had like a bingo, right? Boom! In a diagonal line. But nope, Bogard did not do anything. Will he do anything next chapter, though? That is the big question. Next up, they said that Dragon would unleash Conqueror's Haki. I think this could happen. Like I said, the running thematic of all of these predictions is that I think we will get them eventually, but we were shooting a little bit too soon, right? We were too quick on the draw. So no, Dragon did not display any Conqueror's Haki. And now for the last comment prediction, they got this one right. They nailed it. They said that we would see the Sommer's Parent Thorn Trap. And we actually had a whole page dedicated to this right here, where we had a kid up in the tree, and Sommers was like, hey, come down, kid. You know, I don't know how you got up that tree, but right down here, I laid out a cushion for you. And then, of course, the cushion is a bunch of thorns. And then we had the dad stop by. He said, oh, wait, that's my son. I'm gonna catch him. And then, boom, 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 they both ended up dying. So, yeah, this was actually on the money. So not bad, 3 out of 9. Again, hitting that same score as per usual. Let me go ahead and save this and put this in the chest real quick. All right, so On to 1161 predictions. My first guess is that at 2 minimum, let me put 2 minimum here. Boom, boom, boom. We will get new celestial family. Did I spell that right? Families. Yeah, there we go. I think we'll get 2 brand new last name drops. Oda, surprisingly enough, did that last chapter, although he did not tell us who belonged to the new family, that family being the Bavets. The Celestial Dragons in 1160 mentioned that the Fagarlands are leading the race, and right behind them are the Manmeyers, which we already know about, and the Bavets. We do not know who belongs to the Bavet family, but we know that they're neck and neck with the Fagarlands, which is pretty crazy, right? I think that alone speaks volumes on how powerful some of these new families can actually be. So I'm not including Bavets here because, of course, we've heard about them already, but I think we could get 2 brand new name drops next chapter. So I went down last week and I counted all of the Celestial Dragon families we've heard of thus far, and I believe we had 13 or 12 out of 20 revealed. So we are still missing around 8-ish Celestial Dragon families. So if we were to get them next chapter, 2 minimum, I think that'd be beautiful, right? Because we will have to get those names revealed eventually, because those families do play an important role when it comes to the Void Century and the establishment of the WG. My next prediction is that, again, 2 minimum. Did I just put this in all caps? Yeah. Okay, there we go. I just had to cap lock that one. 2 minimum devil fruits revealed. I know. I did this last week, but this time I'm putting a stipulation. We need at least 2 of them. 2 devil fruits have to be named. Brother, obviously, right? We know that Big Mom goes to them immediately. Maybe we go and see her POV. You know, she tries to get the Azure Dragon Fruit from Ivankov. She tries to get the Pawpaw Fruit from Kuma. But after she has a run-in with those 2, what will she do next? Because I do not think Big Mom stops at 2, right? She wants all the fruits for her family members. So I do think that we will maybe switch over to Big Mom's POV, and we'll hear about the rest. So, third prediction. I think this one's a little bit specific. Yeti, God Knight, GK, there we go, or Sharp Teeth explained. Okay, that's not the best way to word it. Sharp, can I put Sharp Teeth just to fit it all in? There we go. So yeah, like I said last week, we got some brand new Knights of God who do not have names yet. One of them being the Yeti, and then the other one being the Sharp Teeth Tall Girl. And we don't know what's up with them, right? Are they human? Are they in transformations? We have no clue. But I think we will get explained next chapter as to what powers they sport or why they look so odd. You know, they look so odd, in fact, that people are saying, oh, you know, the girl might be part fishman, which I think would be really interesting because people already had the theory for Killingham. I don't fully agree with it, per se. I can see where people are coming from, but I just feel like the Celestial Dragons are so discriminatory that they wouldn't let a fish person into their ranks, or even a hybrid. But maybe that's just me. And then same with this Yeti God Knight, right? It could be a transformation, or people are saying he could be like the Yeti Cool Brothers, and he's like this weird spin-off love child of a giant and a furball. So I think that's really interesting. I hope Oda does get in depth with these guys and explain why they look the way they look. Is it an emu transformation, a devil fruit, or were they simply born that way? I hope we find out next week. And I think we will, by the way, because the last chapter on page 2, the MC of the event, he said, oh, it's time to introduce the favorites for the individual competition, and that is why all of the Knights of God are up on the main podium when the games start. Oda cut away from that. I think the only reason he would cut away from it is because he's planning on unveiling all of these God Knights at a later date, possibly the very next chapter. So, for my fourth prediction, again, very specific, Captain John or barbell fighting style reveal. Oh, reveal actually fit. Wow, look at that. Yes, for the longest time, people have been wondering how strong is Captain John. Does Captain John have a devil fruit? Does he have the glug glug fruit that Vasco Shot has? Because on Blackbeard's crew, Vasco Shot, he's a heavy drinker. Captain John's a heavy drinker. It only makes sense if they had the same fruit, right? I feel like he would be a great candidate for that DF. And then, of course, he dies later, and then boom, Vasco Shot could get that. And then as far as Barbell goes, I don't think anybody really cares about him the way I do, but he's a catfish fisherman, right? I want to see how he performs. Does he have crazy fisherman karate? Are those fisherman karate moves that maybe Jimbei could use at a later date? Or does he have a different fighting style entirely? Maybe he has a devil fruit as well. Back when he was first introduced, he had this crazy flame hair thing going on. He was also sporting a beaded necklace. So I was kind of joking with my friend Par, but I was like, yo, like, it looks like he's the old school version of Ace, which, like I said, it's all a joke. So yeah, I want to see what Barbell does. Hopefully Oda gives us something with him, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, it really depends on how long Oda wants to stay at God Valley. Guess number 5. This one's kind of a weird one. No reason as to why we should get this necessarily, but I think we could get a new Marine in Garp's fleet. So right now, the Marines are kind of like the underdogs, right? You look at the Rocks Pirates, you look at Roger's gang, you look at the Knights of God, they have multiple heavy hitters. Garp's fleet? It's really just Garp. I know people want to put Bogard there, and that's fine, but even with the addition of Bogard, it's still just 2 names there, right? Compared to Roger, who has him, Scopper, and Rayleigh. And then, of course, he has a whole cast of members that we just haven't really seen work yet. And then for Rox's group, I think I don't have to really talk about them. I mean, you guys know all of those guys by this point. And then the Knights of God, we're expecting a lot from them, especially here in the final saga. But as far as Garp's gang goes, they just feel so underpowered in the grand scheme of things. Of course, Garp very much so carries the fleet. But aside from Garp and Bogard, does he have a left-hand man? Does he have another person that he can rely on? Because I think that would be pretty damn cool. So now, for my 6th prediction, Rayleigh gets to Shaki. So, funny enough, a lot of people kind of headcanoned this into existence, and I agree, right? When you think about who saves Shaki, I think Rayleigh just makes the most sense. But honestly, it could be anybody else. It could be Roger, it could be Rox, it could even be Dragon, right? Dragon's in close vicinity. Dragon wants to help people. Maybe he sees Shaki in a cage and he's the one who releases her. I think there's a lot of good options as to who could save Shaki. Hell, it could even be Kuma, right? Kuma does save 500 slaves and gets them off the island. Maybe he's the one who does it. We just simply do not know yet. So, on to the bottom row, the 3 predictions that I picked out from the comment section. The first one said that the God Knights, I thought this was really cool, assign points to Rox-Roger. So I'm assuming this would be very reminiscent of Doflamingo back in Dressrosa, where when all hell broke loose and he realized that Usopp has freed all the toys and turned them back into humans, Doflamingo said, hey guys, let's have a game. Let's play a game within the birdcage. Usopp has 5 stars. He's worth 500 million berries. You know, Luffy has 3 stars. Law has 3 stars. I think Kiros had 2 stars and etc. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that was a lot of fun. And considering the fact that God Valley is a tournament, considering the fact that God Valley is a game and Garling does get assigned as the champion by the end of it, I could very well see the MC saying the same thing here. Saying, oh, now that pirates have invaded, Knights of God, if you want additional points, hunt down these people. Roger's worth 1 million points. Rox is worth 2 million points or something of the sort. I think this is a really, really fun idea. On to point number 8. Dragon confronts Garling. But there's a caveat here because I think this is a pretty shoo-in prediction. There's a caveat that says Garp helps. So we can all easily see this, right? Dragon has just kidnapped 2 of Garling's kids. Garling, of course, if he pays attention, he'll be like, hey, Marine, what are you doing, man? And then maybe Garling goes in for the kill or he goes in to attack Dragon, and then Garp intervenes and he saves his son. And honestly, I think that'd be a beautiful panel, right? It would also show the whole, like, Marine and Celestial Dragon perspective, and maybe this is what makes Dragon lose faith in the Marines as a whole, if he didn't already lose whole face already. So yeah, I think this would be great. Is this hard to get? Yes. You know, Dragon confronting Garling, I think is a shoo-in, but adding in the Garp help, that's a tough one. But I respect it, and I think this is very plausible. But, of course, that's my own headcanon, right? So, on to the last common prediction. Again, focusing around Dragon. They say that Dragon eats a fruit this chapter. And I think they had a couple more things about that, like maybe Dragon's not the best with this fruit. But we'll just kind of end it right there, right? Dragon eats his fruit this chapter, and I think this could happen, right? Amongst all the chaos, he sees Big Mom going after the fruits. He's like, wait a minute, there's treasure chests. Maybe I could send them off with a pirate. And he kind of makes way over there, right? Dragon, like I said, is in close vicinity to all of this. Hell, I even think this right here could be a great way to end the chapter. Like, imagine we end the chapter, double spread, Dragon opens the box, sees a fruit, picks it up, and then that's it, right? Like, we see the fruit design, and then Oda leaves us to speculate for an entire week. I know, it sounds like a One Piece chapter, am I right? You know, when you include blue balls, man, that is Oda's specialty right there. On to the numerical values. I don't know why I do this. It's so arbitrary, but I do like doing it. I'm going to add percentages on how likely I think each of these events are to happen. Or are to happen? Could happen? You guys get what I mean. So, Celestial Dragon families, I'm going to put this at 100%. There's no way they do not mention more family names here. I think it would be downright criminal if Oda did not do that. As far as the Devil Fruits revealed, I'm going to go low on this one. I'm going to put it at 20% because I think Oda does want the mystery, or he wants us to speculate on what they are. I think we could get the designs, but, you know, when I talk about the reveal here, I'm mainly leaning towards the names and abilities. So that is why I'm kind of lowballing that one. Yeti God Knight, Sharp Teeth God Knight explained. I'm going to put this pretty high at 70%. We don't have their names yet. I think we will spend some time with them. Maybe not a lot of time, but I think enough time to know what they're all about. Captain John or barbell fighting style? See, funny thing about this is that last chapter, we saw Shiki and Whitebeard fighting, and I'd consider that a W if we were to go for a fighting style reveal. So the thought of Captain John or barbell getting a panel fighting, I think is pretty high. I'm going to put this at 90%. Yeah, I'm going to put that at 90%. I think very highly on that one. New Marine in Garp's fleet. I'm gonna be honest, this sounded really cool, and I like the idea, but I feel like if there was a notable Marine at God Valley alongside Garp, we would probably already know them. So I'm gonna lowball that, 10%. Rayleigh getting to Shaki. This is a feel-good moment. Will it actually happen, though? That's where I'm kind of hung up at. But I'll go at 60%. I think 60 is solid. And you gotta imagine, right? When Roger, Rayleigh, and Scopper got off their boat, the first thing they said was to go get Shaki, right? That is their priority. So yeah, 60% I think is very fair. Actually, I want to bump that up to 70. Yeah, I feel good about that one. God Knights assign points to Rox and Roger. The tough part about this, right? Despite how fun this idea is and how much I like it, let's be real. Nobody takes down Roger here, right? Nobody takes down the Rox pirates here. Well, Captain John could die here, but we know that he's a treasure on a different island, so maybe he survives. No, he dies via mutiny, actually. So no, Captain John survives this. Gonzui could die here, so people could rack in the Gonzui points. Gale Bastard might die here as well. I think Barbell could also die here. Maybe this actually happens. And then as far as Rox go, he does die here, right? I put quotation marks because some people think that he's still alive. But yeah, Rox potentially dies here, so maybe that's why Garling becomes a champion. He gets the highest amount of points from that kill. No, I love this idea, but does it happen? I'll go with 40%. It's so fun that I could see Oda doing it. So, Dragon confronting Garling. This really depends on how fast Oda wants to progress God Valley, but I could go high on this. Let's give it a 50%. There's no way Garling does not notice his kids being taken, right? Right? Yeah, 50%. Dragon eats the fruit this chapter, also 55%, putting it in the 50 range, just like the last one. I think this feels pretty good. All right, eventually this will happen. But there we have it, you guys. Let me know what do you think about these predictions down below. The chapter spoilers should be out in like a day or two, so stay tuned for that. But until then, you guys take care, and let me know what you're most excited to see in the next chapter. Personally, man, give me the Knights of God. I want to see those boys in action, because the way I view them, right, they're potentially the final villain faction will ever get revealed in the entire series. Unless Oda gets wacky and brings in space pirates or a brand new pirate group entirely, like the Knights of God are it, man. So I'm putting a lot of stock on these boys. I think some of them could die here, by the way. Just because I'm putting stock on them doesn't mean they're going to be infallible, right? They're going to lose. But until they lose, I hope at least Garling looks phenomenal. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out, and stay safe, brothers. Also, before we end off this video, well, technically, we already ended the video. This is me coming in while I'm editing. I wanted to clarify something I said in the post-game video, because I memed about how Loki is telling this entire flashback in the span of 3 minutes. How is that even possible? Of course, part of me was joking, but part of me was also kind of serious. Of course, I don't think we're getting the whole God Valley flashback given to Luffy and Hiruden, but I do question when and where the flashback starts and stops for Luffy and Hiruden. Because Loki did want to tell them about that awful day, the day King Harold died. But here's the catch. I do like to imagine that Loki would want to build up how King Harold got in that situation in the first place. So maybe he does explain partially his relationship to Rocksteady Syvduck. Maybe he does explain how he met Shanks at Murray's Raw later after God Valley. We don't really know yet, right? I think it all just depends on how King Harold exactly dies. Like if Emu or the Knights of God play a role in that, maybe Loki does say, oh yeah, by the way, the Knights of God, they were present at God Valley, yada yada, right? So I think once we do leave this flashback, Oda will give us context clues as to what Luffy and Hiruden actually did here. And we gotta remember, right? Luffy is interested in Shanks' lore, so I do think that we will, or I say we, I do think that Luffy will hear something about Shanks. Like I said, whether it's about Murray's Raw, I don't think he knows about Shanks' origins, right? Of course, because King Harold isn't here and Loki isn't here. But we also don't know who comes to Elbaf afterwards, right? Maybe the Rocks Pirates do come to Elbaf afterwards, and they tell King Harold about how Rocksteady Syvduck fell that day. There's still a lot of things left up in the air. And as much as I love the memes about how Loki is telling this whole flashback in 3 minutes, obviously that will get, buttered over. Or if it does go over 3 minutes, maybe Hiruden will slap Loki saying, oh, that was like 4 minutes or 5 minutes, right? I think there are still a lot of things left up in the air. So partially, like I said, I was memeing about it because we had like the whole rap god thing, like Loki speaking at light speed, telling this flashback. But also it's like, okay, but where does it start and end, right? Did Loki actually give context about his eyes? I don't think so, but then again, Luffy's kind of curious about that too, so if he said it, I don't think Luffy would be super upset about it. And maybe not Hiruden either, right?